All right, so you're welcome back. Uh, After we've gone for the advert, once again, we want to appreciate our sponsors, Contemporary Consulting, ACT, the HAP Association, and ICANN Africa. Thank you all for being part of this summit. Straight to the first session of the day. And we will be looking at the first session, which is on digital infrastructure for a connected Africa, roles of multi-stakeholder cooperation. And I believe that our panelist for this session is very much ready to deliver on this topic, not just for recommendations purposes, but for actionable items to be put into the real action. So I have for this session, the moderator, Mr. Paul Rowney, who is the former chair of AfICTA and a very active AfICTA member who is going to be moderating this session. We have a list of speakers. He will be listing them out and be introducing them as I turn the leadership of the session to him. So welcome, Mr. Paul Rowney.
Thank you, PM. How are we doing? Do I have my team here? Okay, I can see my team. Okay, so yeah, firstly, it's wonderful to see everybody. It's an exciting day for us at AfICTA. It's an annual summit we hold, and we're happy to see so many people here. We have our distinguished guests. Some have already spoken. We have many colleagues and partners of ours and many friends from our continent and the continent and beyond. This is an important session with regards to where we are as a continent moving forward. The title of this session is Digital Infrastructure for a Connected Africa, Roles of Multi-Stakeholder Cooperation. So just to set the scene a little bit before I hand over to my speakers, within Africa, we're witnessing remarkable progress in connectivity. Countries are getting connected, people are getting connected, more importantly. There's a lot of interconnection between the countries. Fiber is being rolled out between towns and landing points and cities. We have a multitude of data centers, new and existing data centers, old ones being upgraded, new ones being built. And many of these data centers didn't exist in the past, and we have the big global players opening up within these data centers. This is all a catalyst towards improving connectivity on the continent. And as we know, better connectivity creates opportunities around improved education, cross-border commerce, healthcare, and innovation around the tech space. But we also need to understand, and I think we all acknowledge, that on the continent we have quite a big digital divide, and this is something that needs to be addressed if we're going to give equitable access to the internet and the benefits of access to all of our citizens. Connectivity is costly, it's not for free, and infrastructure is expensive, and the build out is challenged. There's large areas to cover between the cities, and power, service reliability, they're real issues. So, one of the questions we're looking at is it just about building infrastructure, or is it building the right kind of infrastructure that fits our requirements? An infrastructure that is affordable, is inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. An infrastructure that can bring Africa to the forefront of the AI revolution. So, when we look at part of the theme, and that's the role of multi-stakeholder cooperation, and this is what we see as the making of where we're striving to move forward. And why does cooperation matter between the stakeholders? No single actor can build our digital future alone. We have governments that are providing the policy frameworks and in many cases incentives to make investment on the continent possible. We have the private sector that's bringing innovation, capital, and capacity around growing our ICT infrastructure. We've got civil society that keeps us reminded, that the people are important and it's not just about profits, and that access is equitable. And of course, our academia, which is providing phenomenal research and building knowledge and talent that is needed for us to move forward. So today, we're going to explore where Africa stands in terms of its digital readiness. We're going to look into some of the key barriers that limit the expansion and equitable access. We hope to see some examples of where partnerships have been successful and what steps we can take collectively to strengthen and bridge those digital divides. So this session is not about me. So I want to introduce my esteemed panelists. We have Miss Amrita Choudhury, who is the director of the CCAOI and a member of the Internet Governance Forum Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group, where Amrita is a leading voice in digital inclusion and stakeholder engagement, with decades of experience in strengthening regional and global cooperation in internet governance. We have Mr. Kunle Olorundare, who is the president of the Internet Society Nigeria chapter. Kunle has been instrumental in driving community connectivity initiatives, capacity building, and internet development across West Africa and beyond. And we have Mr. Hossam Elgamal. Hossam is a member of the IGF multi-stakeholder group and brings a wealth of experience from the private sector and policy circles. So please join me in welcoming our esteemed panelists. And what will happen? I'm going to hand over to each of the panelists. They're going to give an intervention, sharing their perspectives. And then we're going to moderate some questions, and then we're going to open the floor for questions. It's important. It's not just about us talking. We want to hear back, and we want to get some interventions from the audience. So as you listen through this session, think about your own experiences, ideas, and get ready to join the conversation on this session. It's about dialogue, and it's about learning from each other. So I'm going to now invite my first panelist to the floor. I'd like to invite Ms. Amrita Choudhury to share her reflections. Amrita, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. I hope I'm audible to all of you. And thank you, Jimson and AfICTA, for inviting me. Though I'm not from the continent, as Paul was mentioning, you have people from the continent and from across. So I come from Asia Pacific, but certain examples of African region and APAC also matches, because APAC is equally diverse in terms of terrains, connectivity, access, etc. And I'll talk about why this kind of cooperation is necessary at the global level too. And I'll keep it brief. One of the things when we look at Africa from the outside is Africa is spoken in one breath, but Africa is a continent and it is also diverse. You have landlocked countries, you have also countries which have access to the seas. Those who have access to submarine cables have a better way of connecting. How the connections happen between the landlocked countries, internet exchanges, etc., also have a lot of role to play in building the digital infrastructure. And as Paul mentioned, I think he mentioned most of the points. One of the critical things of having infrastructure development is also connecting people. Globally, also more than 1/4 of people are not connected, and the numbers are a bit more higher in Africa. So obviously connectivity is important. Laying the cables to connect is also expensive. How do you do it, etc., are certain issues which the world has been grappling, especially the last mile, the access, the demand and supply rests together. And obviously there are various factors which are spoken about in these aspects. And today, when we live in the information age, where the one who has more technological advancement has better, I would say, power in all aspects, even negotiations, it's important that even developing countries develop their infrastructure, or at least there is a balance in the tech transfer so that all countries can grow equitably. And another point which Paul was mentioning is that each stakeholder has a role to play. And if it cannot be just that government investment or government policies will get everyone connected. Had it been so, we would have all been connected. And it is also not possible for private sector to put in all the funds. Many times there are funds, as Jimson always mentions, there are, you have funds within countries, but how it is used is also important so that it gives you the returns you want. And the other thing which is important and lessons which people can learn is also, how you can break these silos. For example, you have community networks in certain places, but how do you have the coordination between different places? And it is also important how the global policies are framed. For that, I believe the voices from the people of Africa are important. Most global policies, even for connectivity or internet governance, for example, till now has been mostly global north oriented. The sensitivities, the regional diversities, or even the issues on the ground in global south is very different. And when such policies are made, it is important our voices are there. For example, if we are looking at the WSIS Plus 20 review, which is happening, it talks a lot about inclusion. It talks a lot about digital access. It also talks about AI. How do you build capacity of people using AI, especially of developing countries, landlocked countries, LDCs, etc. I think the voices are important so that those nuances can be given, or how youth can be involved. Similarly, how can you build capacity at different level? Because we look at capacity as one word, but capacity has to be built everywhere. It can be at the bureaucracy level, it can be at an entrepreneurial level, it can be at a youth level to build the skills to work. So capacity building is also a very crucial part in this journey if we want to build a robust infrastructure. The technical know-how, the using, Jimson was mentioning about cybersecurity, safety, etc. I think that safe surfing part is also important because you need to have the trust on the internet. So if global policies are framed and, for example, there is a regional aspect of it or a national, and there is a reporting structure, I think you can always look at where you are, where you want to be. It's kind of a mirror to help you in portraying things. And you can also learn from various examples. And I'll just give an example of India, where we have people who also have purchasing power issues. of devices, etc. So we have the reusable handset offers, etc., which go on, which reduces the cost of devices, which can help people in accessing, the internet, because on one side you have to build your infrastructure, on the other side you also have the issues of accessibility, device, I would say cost, etc., as also the local languages. How do you have, I would say, services in the local languages? You could have that if, governments also build policies which are more friendly, which balances user interest as well as promotes innovation. I think that's also important. And also at some places, having the small, medium entrepreneurs who help in this particular bridging using internet is also, I think, important. And this entire thing has to be looked at entirety. It cannot be just one player. But I think the global policies, when they are drafted, needs to have input from the local levels. If I'm talking about the African perspective, different people, as well as what you are doing, there has to be some synergy with, some, I would say, auditing of how things are developing, because there's a lot of grant, etc., which is coming into Africa at this moment. It is important it is used in a proper manner, and there are checks and balances. Even civil society can look at it, and there should be roping in of all stakeholders. It cannot be just simply some people doing. Academics also have a role in terms of doing, giving you those kind of critical data points which can help on it. I think, Paul, I'll leave it at that. And I'll look forward to your questions. I hope I've been able to answer your question.
Thank you, Amrita. Very insightful. Just a couple of things like highlighting that connectivity is expensive, and this is one of the things we need to solve, because that creates affordability challenges. And of course, in the information age, access is power. So if we deny people access, then we deny them the power that they need to uplift themselves. And of course, around the partnership that, government, we cannot rely on government. Government's not going to connect us. We need all the actors involved to connect, and of course, building capacity, in every aspect in order to build a robust infrastructure. Okay, now we're going to move to our next speaker, Kunle Olorundare. Are you ready, sir? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you very much. Yeah, let me start by appreciating Amrita for breaking the ice. She has actually brought the main issues to the limelight. And I really appreciate that. In fact, when you look at Africa, Africa is such a unique continent. It's a beautiful continent. It's unique, so to say. And you will agree with the coastal lines. And of course, we also have those countries that are, landlocked. And if you want to look at how infrastructures are going to be distributed of course, the perspectives, the dimensions are going to be different. Why? Because the way you are going to lay your optical fiber in a landlocked location is different from the way you are going to lay it for those countries in the coastal line, so to say. So let me quickly cast our mind back to how these technologies we actually started from the analog technology in those days when we are running, the internet on 56 kilobits per second. You know what that means. Before you could download 1 meg, maybe you have to sleep in a cyber cafe. But nowadays, we have 5G, which of course is highly digital. That is a digital technology, made it possible for me to be able to download, high volume of data. We are talking about, 500 meg nowadays, 600 meg, and so on and so forth. And that is the reason we are able to talk about broadband solutions, so to say. Yes, we have those solutions in recovery. There are issues we need to start to, in terms of many, because you will agree with me that the way you are going to give shot to a place like you cannot. Say, for example, if you have a service operator, but the moment you say, okay, go provide this in area, it because it's
Yeah, I think we're having a connectivity problem with our speaker there. Maybe for now.
Can you hear me?
Are you back?
So
Yes.
I think we're just talking about the challenges in Africa, and it showed up, So the issue is we need a meaningful connectivity. We need to start looking at how we can have a connectivity that is, resilient, that is reliable. Not that alone. We also need to look at the equipment, the end user equipment that we are using in Africa. In Africa, you will agree with that we consume more technology more than we produce, right? So we need to start looking at how we can open up our manufacturing, sector so that we too can start producing equipment that are actually meant for our own locality. And I had it when Amrita talked about having solutions in our local dialect. And this is going to be possible by the time we start producing and manufacturing equipment locally. And I also meant to mention the issue of policy. Yes, we have fantastic policies in Africa, no doubt. However, I think I need to say this. We need to start looking at how we're going to take it to the next level. Next level in the sense that, we should be looking at how Africa can actually have harmonized standards, harmonized policies, harmonized solutions, so to say. I'll give you a very good example. In Europe, I'm sure all of us know about the European Union. And of course, we also have African Union, so to say. The European Union has mandated some other organization like the organization that is responsible for setting standard, which in French it is known as European norme. That is the European standard. So I think it is high time we started talking about African standards, right? Take, for example, the Europe is leading when it comes to, data privacy policy. They have the GDPR. And as a matter of fact, GDPR has become something that is global. So I think in Africa, all our data solicitors, they need to come together and say, hey, Africa, let us have Africa data regulatory policy, the one that is going to be meant for all African countries. And if any country in Africa wants to have any transaction with any other part of the world, we too can always push it for and say, no, we are not going to use GDPR. We are going to use ADPR just for the sake of this discussion. I think these are the kind of conversations we should be talking about. And I think it is high time we started talking about them. Not just talking about them, we need to start having solutions. And one of the strategies we can use to get a very good solution is when we are talking about, a smart objective. You need to create an objective that is specific, one that is measurable, one that is achievable, the one that is relevant to us in Africa. And of course, it is time bound. It is not about talking about having a policy that we start today and probably maybe is going to finish in the next 5 years. Of course, before you finish a policy in the next 5 years, it has become obsolete. So we need to have a policy that we're going to set now is going to be relevant to this particular time and is going to be useful to us. And you can always link this with what is happening even at the global stage, where we have all these conversations like the IGF. Okay, yeah, we have conversations at the level of the IGF, but we need to start looking at how we bring all those conversations home, how we are going to make them to be relevant in, bringing up our own policies, our own guidelines, our own standard. I think that is the right way to go. Let me leave it at that so that we can advance this conversation when you ask your question. Thank you very much for giving me this time.
Thank you, sir. Brilliant points. It's interesting to take us back sometimes, to where it all started in those cyber cafes, internet cafes, to where we've gone. And I think many people here might not even remember, us sharing those small networks just to get email and things. And now, with fiber, high volume data networks, 5G networks, the point of meaningful connectivity is key to the conversation. It's not just about getting connected. It's about getting connected and the connection being meaningful. And then, of course, building our own, becoming part of the value chain, I guess, where we build our own products and services over the internet, our own IP and standards around GDPR and other things. So thank you. So to broaden the conversation a little further, I would like to invite our next speaker, Hossam Elgamal, to have his intervention. Hossam, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Paul. I hope everybody is okay, and I'm really happy to be once again on one of the AfICTA summits. Now this is the 13th one. Thanks to all board members and chairs over the years, yourself, Paul, Jimson, myself, and of course, Olorundare. Now, just before I go into our direct discussion, I just wanted to highlight and reflect on what Jimson was talking about the informal multi-stakeholder sounding board for the World Summit for the Information Society plus 20 years. And I'll just share on the chat the link for this IMSB, so people can check in if people do not know about it. And also we have on the IMSB, I'm one of the members of the IMSB, as well as Jameson and Amrita. This is the link where people can know more about it and can, if required, connect with us to give some reflection from their point of view on the WSIS, so we can carry it back to the UN DESA and to the member states before the resolution are come. Yes, exactly. Office hours, they will find it there, and we started the office hours today, in fact, this morning, and there will be one in the afternoon, and there is another day with 2 slots. Coming back to our discussion, I just want to highlight that we stand at a pivotal moment. Africa is no longer just a continent of potential, it is a continent in acceleration, and digital infrastructure is the high octane fuel for this journey. However, a vast digital divide remains. Bridging this gap is too large, too complex, and too capital intensive for any single entity, be it government, a corporation, a development bank, or any, to achieve alone. So my view is that multi-stakeholder cooperation is not an option. It is a fundamental, non-negotiable architecture for sustainable, inclusive, and scalable digital infrastructure development across Africa. It is the only way to build a digital future that leaves no one behind. We need to know the role of each of the stakeholders. So the government is really the enabler and regulator, creating an enabling environment, stable, transparent, predictable policy and regulatory framework. This is the trust layer that de-risks private investment. The private sector is the second stakeholder, where we bring the capital, the technology, and the execution speed for rollouts like fiber, data centers, mobile networks, and are the engine of physical infrastructure growth. Now, the development bank or the international funding institutions are the ones that bring the risk mitigation and blended finance. So it is very important to provide concessional finance, technical assistance, and guarantees. Blended finance, they bridge the gap between bankability and developmental impact. Think of initiatives like the World Bank's Digital Economy for Africa. And last but not least, the civil society and the academia. Those are the constants and localizer, ensuring inclusivity, digital literacy, human-centric design. They ground projects in local reality. They address the usage gap, and they ensure the infrastructure is built for the people. So business success hangs on a relation that is greater than the sum of its parts, where one sector's strengths mitigate another's weaknesses. Cooperation is a process and not just a meeting. For it to be effective in the African context, 3 pillars must be robust. One, shared vision and interoperability. So stakeholders must be working towards a unified regional vision, like the African continent free trade area, for example. So digital infrastructure must be interoperable across borders to support a single digital market. Example, supporting the development digital public infrastructure for digital ID and payments across multiple countries to reduce fragmentation. This could be a very important vision. The second pillar is the risk and reward alignment, innovative financing. So the private sector views Africa as a high risk. We need blended finance and public-private partnership that redistribute risk intelligently. Government can guarantee demand for connectivity, so connecting schools and health centers in exchange for private companies extending networks to underserved areas. Third pillar is the governance for trust and sustainability. So cooperation must extend beyond building physical assets. It must govern data, security, and digital rights. We need transparent governance models, not just for infrastructure ownership, but for the rules of the road, to ensure that digital economy is ethical, safe, and trustworthy for citizens. Finally, in conclusion, the path forward, the future of Africa digital landscape will not be defined by the technology we import, but by the partnership we forge. Let us move beyond more consultation to true co-creation. Let us commit to building digital infrastructure that is not just technically sound, but socially responsive, driven by the capital of the private sector, the legitimacy of the government, and the voice of the people. This is how we will truly bridge the digital divide and unleash Africa's full economic and human potential. The time is for building together is now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hossam. It's good practical insights as to where we are, and the fact that multi-stakeholder involvement is not an option. It is the only option. If we're going to realize the full potential of a digital Africa, and that a continental approach is important. That we unify how we digitalize. All our countries are moving towards digital IDs. We're trying to enhance cross-border commerce and trust in the digital payments. And it's still frightening that it's still easier to do digital transactions between continents than on the continent, and that needs to change. And the fact that it's not really about the technology, it's about the partnership and the collaboration. So I think we've got some very broad insights into this theme, and I see some questions popping up. What we're asking is if the attendees can post questions on the question and answer button rather than in the chat. I've seen some in the chat. So if we can repost those questions into the Q&A at the bottom, you'll see a Q&A button. If we click on that Q&A button. So while we're collecting some questions, I just wanted to ask a question to Amrita. If in your own words, what do you see as the current barriers that are limiting Africa's digital infrastructure growth? And how do you think that stakeholder collaboration can help to remove those barriers?
Thanks, Paul. I think this is a question which many nations are also facing. Even in India, with the highest number of internet users, we have that. People who are not connected. I think one is how the government is framing the policies. We did hear policies are great, but how is the implementation happening? Broadband policies across paper is very beautiful, but are we streamlining the bottlenecks? Many times, which we have seen, and I'm using an India case because I come from here and I think many things may be similar. For example, there is a policy which has been made of using the Universal Obligation Fund, but it is used in a particular way. For example, if it is to connect the rural people, it will be only used by the agencies which the government wants. Why don't you give the private sector more incentives to connect in those rural areas, which for them is unfeasible for that matter? Or if there are community networks, why do you not link them together in some way with the national fiber optics or something, which will make it much more easier to use? There are more innovative ways to connect, and there are many new technologies. Why not look at blending them? That's one way of, to look. One is at the policy level. Is it investor friendly? Is it business friendly also? Sometimes, the policies are not made in a multi-stakeholder manner. That is why many times when you want to, even implement them, they are a bit flawed because they don't take into consideration the ground realities. Similarly, it is also about adoption. If I'm talking about basic internet, do the women have the device to connect? Because normally in families, a smartphone is expensive for many people. If there is one smartphone, who would be using it? Would it be the person the man in the family or the kids in the family who may need it for school studies? Does the woman have a device to connect, for example, or do girls get the device because of social patterns in many places? Similarly, if you're connecting, do you have internet exchanges within the particular country to connect people? Or, or how is the internet coming into the country? So there are various issues which comes in. Now, if you're talking about at the adoption level, do people actually know how to use the internet in a safe way? Every country today is promoting mobile banking, or mobile money. It is easy. It is very easy for people, but there are simultaneously increase in cyber frauds. So are we keeping our, educating or building capacity of our users, and the cyber frauds are growing everywhere. Similarly, if you're having data centers coming up, are you giving the right kind of incentives to people to come and invest or create data centers? And as you mentioned, Paul, the electricity. Do we have the electricity available for that kind of data center bandwidths? One of my colleagues did mention about manufacturing units. If we want to set up the manufacturing units, are we giving the right kind of incentive to set it up so that you can build up at an economical cost? Because if you look at it, China is manufacturing it at a very economical cost. Similarly, are you having those kinds? Or you could look at lessons. For example, in India, we do manufacture low-cost handsets, which are helping, and they come automatically inbuilt with multilingual languages. That could be one of the questions was there on multilingualism. So there are various options which needs to be looked at different levels of access, as where, both the supply side and the demand side, so that these basic issues can be looked at various levels. Similarly, if you want businessmen, small businesses to do business online, are the policies suitable? E-commerce policies, for example, or are they restrictive? So those are certain things I think which needs to be looked at even at the policy level. But as Hossam was mentioning, multi-stakeholderism is the only option at this point. However, at times we want to do a selective multi-stakeholderism within countries. Geopolitics or even tips within countries are different, but I think the most important barrier is that we still have investments coming in. How do you break the silos and make it work together? I think that's there. Many times right of way is an issue for ISPs, despite saying everything that we want to connect everyone. I think these are certain things I would highlight, which can go a big way. It may not diminish it, but it would go a big way. Thank you, Paul. I think I'll end it there.
Thank you. And yeah, the issue of right of way, it can be expensive, this right of way. It's often paid for, and then shared infrastructure where you have people duplicating infrastructure down the same right of way, which is frustrating. Hossam, I want to call you back to the floor. That we have a question from the audience that I'd like you to give a stab at, if you can.
Sure.
It's a question from Musa Marangi. Okay, sorry for the mispronunciation of that, but the question is, how will African leaders continue to collaborate with other multi-stakeholders to ensure that the digital infrastructure and the internet access for a connected Africa is fully available to rural communities, especially the underdeveloping communities in Africa?
Well, this is a difficult question.
Yes.
This is a difficult question, but because the real problem that we all face regarding connecting rural areas is the return on investment that is required. And this is, of course, the part that the government comes in and has to put efforts and support and bring also financial institution to help in order to provide the necessary funding, because at the end, this would lead to the development required and achieving the SDGs for each of the countries. So, in fact, usually in a multi-stakeholder approach, and as I stated before, government will be able easily to highlight the need of connectivity for schools, for medical centers and healthcare. And they can, along with that, highlight the part of the rural areas that are required to be implemented along with that, and to have a balanced approach with regard to the financing part of it. So how the countries collaborate together, this is an important one, because sometimes it is true that even the infrastructure might be much further away from the central capital for some country and much closer to the other country capability. And for this there would be a need for a closer collaboration among the African countries together in order to reduce the cost of implementing the public infrastructure altogether. And as I stated it before, it's like the free trade agreement of Africa. African countries need to collaborate closer together to reduce to increase the efficiency of the implementation, reduce the risk, reduce the cost, and also collaborating with private sector in implementing this. It would be much easier for the private sector that has a successful implementation in one country to roll it out to the other in the rural areas and to provide the necessary connectivity that is required. I think from this perspective, without further collaboration from countries altogether, the cost would be much higher. And I think they can also rely on two current institutions that should help them. One is the ECA, the UN Economic Commission for Africa, to help them move forward in a closer collaboration among African countries, and also maybe Smart Africa that has as a mandate to implement projects across the continent and not just by country. Thank you.
Thank you, Hossam. And yes, it's a difficult question to answer because there's no single way to
There's no
address
clear
this
answer
problem.
to it.
No, but it's something we need to find a way to solve, because too many of our citizens are left out of
You
the
know,
digital.
one point that is important, maybe what Amrita just highlighted, and you talked about it in different session before with ECA especially. We need to learn from each other, not just from the north. So we have some countries that have implemented good public infrastructure, including the rural areas. We need to learn from them how they did it and how we can just replicate and roll out based on that. So we have an efficient, bulletproof implementation with a good finance.
And I think also we need to try and change the perspective of some of the actors of digital infrastructure. You know, I was in Zambia the other day, and all the roads are being rebuilt, but we're not laying fiber or connectivity along the roads that are being rebuilt. So a lot of investment goes into old infrastructure like roads, but very little goes into new infrastructure like digital infrastructure.
You are right.
I have a question now, which I'd like to pose to Kunle, if I can. It's a question from the floor. It's from Chris Wedge. How can we translate and deploy digital knowledge and expertise into the 50 African languages? And can this accelerate our developmental growth and enhance our digital security ecosystem?
All right, okay. I think
give that a go.
That's an interesting question, and I think that's what we really need to be doing in Africa. Recall when we started, we talked about the need for us to come together in Africa. And for us to come together, we need to look at how we can bring ourselves together. And one of the things we can do is to have harmonized policy. And in this case, especially for this question, I think we need to start to look at harmonized digital literacy in Africa. You see, one of the biggest challenges we have in Africa is that we have beautiful and fantastic policies, guidelines, standards everywhere. But again, I think it is high time we started looking at how we can harmonize them. We need to start talking about harmonized guidelines. We need to start talking about harmonized standards. We need to start talking about harmonized policies. Recall I mentioned that when I was reflecting on the way things are in Africa. So in this case, I think that is one thing that's going to help us. And this is the way it's going to go. If we have harmonized digital literacy, right? And one of the strategic initiatives that must be put in that is the fact that, right, we need to try as much as possible to bring everybody aboard. And the way to bring everybody aboard is that we need to translate all these initiatives into our local dialects, right? We need to translate this into our local dialects, and that is going to help us in Africa. And let me cite a very good example. I know I can. Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Number is actually doing a wonderful work in that regard. There is an initiative known as Universal Acceptance. And what Universal Acceptance speaks to are two fundamental issues. One, internationalized domain names, which speaks to issues that have to do with bringing domain names to all the, local dialects, being able to use your local dialect in domain names. That is on one hand. Then on the other hand, still on this initiative is the email address internationalization. You can just imagine me being able to put all the diacritics that are supposed to be in my name while I'm trying to write my email, Olorundare, right? You know, there is this diacritics, Remire, something like that. You put it and you are able to put it in your email. So those are the initiatives. But again, we need to take it beyond that. Africa needs to come together in such a way as to be able to now have content in our local dialects, just like we have it in English. I've written a couple of peer-reviewed papers on internet decolonization, although there have been some issues like, okay, you shouldn't be using the word decolonization. But again, you will still agree with me that there are some languages that are more prominent on the internet. And that is why we are saying that, okay, guys, we need to have all these contents in other languages. And in this case, now we're talking about 50 African languages. And I think this is doable. I belong to a community of practice, and the main issue we're trying to solve is how are we going to ensure that the internet is fully decolonized? So I think it is high time we in Africa started looking at this kind of community of practice. We need to come together and say, okay, we need to have the content on the internet, even in our local dialect. It is doable. I mean, it is no rocket science. It's just a matter of we agreeing, coming together, and get it done. If we have a policy, and that is the reason why I talked about harmonized policy. And of course, the domino effect of these are not far-fetched. This is going to have positive effect on our digital economy. It's going to have positive effect on even digital literacy. You see, this issue of digital literacy, we need to start to look at other perspectives. When you say somebody is digitally illiterate, what are you saying? You are saying that the person cannot use computer because peradventure the computer only speaks in English. So let's say the computer can actually speak Fulfulde. The computer can speak Ashanti language in Ghana. So are we going to say the person is digitally illiterate? Of course, no. So that is the reason why we need to start looking at how we can bring our languages even into the internet so that we fully decolonize the internet. And I believe this is doable. First, we have harmonized policy on digital literacy. Then we swing into action. Thank you very much.
Paul, you're muted.
Sorry, thank you, Kunle. Hossam, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and this is something that was discussed among the MSB and is part of the discussion for the for the WSIS plus 20. The coming of the AI, the strong coming of the AI is bringing along a lot of challenges, but is bringing also a lot of opportunities. And especially for the digital divide and the indigenous societies and languages, the AI will bring a lot of help in to accommodate and to bring in culture, languages, etc. And we need in Africa to take this into consideration and to start working on putting awareness and capacity building in order to help the training of the AI to be able to accommodate the indigenous languages all over Africa and to be able to spontaneously translate and communicate among different, because certainly a lot of communities, especially in rural areas, are disconnected because they cannot read the language that is on the internet. Not just, if they have the infrastructure, they don't, many of them will not be able to understand and communicate. So now there is an opportunity, we need to grab it, along with, of course, more implementation of digital infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Hossam. And I think, yes, we need to understand the power of AI in helping to resolve particularly some of these language issues. Okay, we're coming close to the end of our session. So what I wanted to do now is just to give each of my panelists a minute or two just to give a closing remark, and then I will close off this session so we keep to time. I'm going to do it in the reverse order. So, Hossam, I'm calling you back in the floor just for some last closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, it's a very good session for me. I learned a lot from my colleagues. I just want to reiterate that the only way forward is multi-stakeholder close collaboration. And in addition to this, much closer multilateral collaboration among the African countries with joint projects, joint vision moving forward in order to be able to be on the level required of the digital infrastructure and to achieve the SDGs required. Collaborating closely with ECA, with Smart Africa, and capitalizing on the new mandate of the WSIS that will take place in December would be really great, especially that the UN now is embracing multi-stakeholderism. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hossam. Kunle, the floor is yours for a closing remark.
All right, thank you very much. So there is no gainsaying that multi-stakeholderism is the way to go. We have all agreed on that, and that is a statement of fact. And as a matter of fact, I believe that multi-stakeholderism will help us a lot in achieving a lot of things. Take, for example, the issue of harmonized standard, harmonized policy, harmonized guidelines, which of course should be even at the front burner when we're talking about how we can actually have regional integration in Africa. Even on this conversation that is ongoing now, talking about WSIS plus 20, we need to have a common front. That is very important. And for us to be able to advance this conversation too, the issue of digital literacy needs to be demystified. We need to move away from calling people that cannot use computer in English digitally illiterate. We need to start looking at how we can have solutions that are in our own language so that people can appreciate digital literacy even more. I think that is very important. Then capacity building, it's one thing that we cannot take away from the fact that if Africa is going to move, or advance, we need to build capacity, and Internet Society is doing a lot in that regard. And beyond that, I want to encourage us in Africa to participate in all these standard setting, organization activities like ITU, WRC, and more importantly, for the digital ecosystem, Internet Engineering Task Force and Internet Research Task Force. I've been there, I've seen what is going on there. That is where they define the future of the internet. And you know what? I can count the number of Africans that are actually participating in IGF. Wake up, Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kunle. Amrita, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I think one of the main things is keeping the conversation on. You need to have discussions on especially, the best practices, what one can learn from each other, and obviously to build a very robust digital infrastructure in Africa. It needs collaborative action of all stakeholders, firstly to reduce the gaps, to also create the right kind of policy environment where there are investors, there are businesses coming in to set up infrastructure to provide services, which is obviously the policies needs to support innovation, but is right respecting, and obviously looking at the sustainability part also, looking at how you can create jobs for the young people, better capacity building, etc. So I think more collaboration in all aspects is needed. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. So as we close on this session, firstly, I'd like to thank our panelists for their time and their insightful and thought-provoking contributions towards this conversation. As we mentioned, it is a conversation. We want people to start thinking and digesting and coming back with their own thoughts. Today's discussion has reinforced that our digital transformation is not just about infrastructure. It's about the people, it's about the skills, It's about the right investment, and it's also about the right policies that fit our needs. We can't just take what other people have done and transplant it. It's not going to work. We need to build our own policies and infrastructure. And that, the collaboration between the stakeholders is key, the only way forward. We need the governments, we need the regulators. And when we talk about regulators, we need our regulators thinking out of the box. We need to do things maybe differently to the way they've been done on other continents to address particularly the digital divide that we have. We need to access the money. There is money on the continent, and we need to leverage that towards building the infrastructure. We need a shared vision, open dialogue. We need to talk about the challenges. We need to solve those challenges. So as I close, I want to encourage all of us to take what we've learned and discussed today and to see how we can foster those partnerships, how we can better collaborate across the continent, share practical successes and help ourselves to digitally connect our continent. So once again, thanks to the speakers. Thank you to you, the participants at this workshop. Without you, we wouldn't have a workshop. Thank you to the organizers. They've worked very hard to pull all this together. And yeah, let's enjoy the rest of the sessions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Paul and panelists. Before we close this session, I would like us to have a group photograph. So for the panelists of the session, be free to open your cameras. And if you're also there, you're able to open your camera. We want to do this together with the panelists. So please, on your camera. From 3, so that we have a very smiley photograph taken. 3, 2, put on a smile. 1, and that was it. So thank you so much, our distinguished panelists on the session, Digital Infrastructure for a Connected Africa, Role of Multi-Stakeholder Cooperation. We appreciate the due diligence that you did to the session. And one of the things I was able to actually pick from this session is the fact that there are issues, there are real issues. One of the issues highlighted is purchasing power. I could recall Amrita saying something is one of the major barriers to having a digital Africa, for us to have a fulfilled, connected Africa. And right of way is something that we need to also keep our tab on. I think Nigeria, I don't know other countries, Nigeria is really doing a lot to ensure that the right of way for the infrastructure builders is reduced to the barest minimum. So we may want to look at making sure that right of way is not a barrier anymore to a digital Africa. And another thing highlighted is power supply. I think power supply is one of the things that is causing a clog to the realization of the digital Africa. So we need to really take a proper look into how we can ensure that power is no more on the way. It's a technology is supposed to have really passed that level. I think with the advent of the solar panel, all the renewable power sources, we can actually leapfrog that barrier. And then fragmented policies and regulatory inconsistencies, we really need to up our games regarding that. So I really, really want to appreciate everyone who has participated in this session, the panelists, participants, and as we move into the next session, which is on digital governance and sovereignty in Africa, I would like to enjoin our participants to stay tuned with us to be part of that session. It is promising to be a very wonderful time out again with our panelists that will be led by the Deputy Chair of AfICTA, Ms. Rachel Shitanda. So thank you so much as we move to a short break. The short break will be ending in another, and we'll see you on the other side.